Hey, welcome. Have you ever finished an assessment, external or internal, by a consulting company, external or internally by your internal audit department? And one of the findings was that you lack a risk appetite for your cybersecurity. And this assessment is a cybersecurity risk assessment, and the assessment would be around your cybersecurity organization. And one of the findings is that you don't have a risk appetite. So, what will you do? Let me elaborate. Risk appetite is very specific to the organization and requires a understanding of this particular organization, the particular industry, the size, how much risk you're willing to take. So let's give you the bad news right up front. There's no universal formula. There's no universal formula for you to establish a risk appetite. The, th- the second problem there is, why did you, as a cybersecurity organization, receive this finding? Because a cyber risk appetite is part of the entire organization risk appetite. Cyber being one, will have another, and so on and so forth, because there is a risk of a particular IT system not to be functioning due to hardware failure or what have you. So there is a certain risk of down operational time affecting and impacting the mission and the corporate objectives and your ability, the ability of your organization delivering the products and services for your customers and shareholders. So there is a risk appetite in every department. But in cybersecurity, why? Well, first of all, you don't set the cyber risk appetite. That has to be from the top down, not a grassroots effort from the bottom up. Now, can you be part of that? Can you provide your insight? Can you provide your expertise? Absolutely. But you will not be the one actually leading that charge. You perhaps might be given the challenge to create one with a senior executive sponsorship. That's a bit different. I don't want you to confuse grassroots versus you doing the work that was delegated to you by a senior executive. That is different. But there is no universal formula. And why is that? Well, there's a few things that I want to share with you. One is industry, right? There's several industries out there, and creating a risk appetite formula, if you will, a methodology, have to take in consideration what industry you're in. Is that on financial sector? Is that on critical infrastructure sector, which finance is part of it? But let's say on healthcare or energy, oil and gas, right? So that depends. Or you a small manufacturer. So what is it? So that will impact that calculation. The other one is the company size, right? Small manufacturer versus one of the biggest oil and gas utilities in the world, or you are one of the biggest healthcare company in the country, or the small co-op organization in inner city of some state. So having a formula that will expand this amount of diversity is very rare and difficult. The other one is risk tolerance. Every organization has a risk tolerance. Organization with big pockets will have a greater risk tolerance versus a small mom and pop shop or a small manufacturer with very no, restaurant industry probably has a very small risk tolerance because the margins and revenue is not that deep. The other one's regulation. Every industry has different regulations, some more regulated than others. Some of them require different things than others, and so on and so forth. Financial sector versus critical energy versus the transportation, manufacturing. So they all have different regulations requiring different aspects of that. And last here, I want to bring it up is the specific threats that each industry may have. Uh, Critical infrastructure, perhaps nation states, is the biggest a threat for critical infrastructure. You see in the news and other nations threatening our power grid, for example, or taking over water systems, or perhaps affecting hospital with malware and ransomware and whatnot. There's plenty of example if you Google it. So a specific threat also needs to be taken in consideration. That boils down to a fact that it is very hard for you to nail down a particular formula. Now, having said that, there are some general guidelines. And this basically means that setting a limit on financial hit that your organization is willing to take from a cyber event will run between 0.5% to 5% of total revenue of a particular organization. So, but things to consider on those already mentioned to you is it depends on these areas. But there are also areas and elements that you cannot really put a dollar value to it. Right? That once again adding to the complexity. For example, damage to your reputation. That is hard to put a dollar value into it. The disruption to operations, very hard to put a dollar value into it. Now, if it is straight one to one down so many times, so many dollars, perhaps you can get to that. But there are nuances to that calculation. The recovery of that operation also should be considered part of that hit, because funds are being deviated from, instead of investing in growth, investing in recovery. So the funds invested in attorneys, communications department to deal with the press, and the IT folks to recover the system, the cybersecurity folks, and the whole cleanup effort, that all has to be accounted towards that. So yes, that becomes a little bit more complex than a one-to-one correlation. So many hours, so many dollars. The other one is losing your customer's trust. Very hard to calculate. First of all, how much trust they had in you before, or is your product that strong that trust will maintain there because you have loyal customer evangelists to your product? That would be a little bit different. So it's still very hard to put a dollar value in it. So the takeaway here is, do not focus on risk tolerance. And that is my opinion. That is, I believe, depending on your industry, perhaps that is something that you must pursue. If you are an insurance company and you require that number for your calculation, by all means, go for it. We need to find a way to calculate the risk for each industry, company size, and overall risk tolerance, and go at it, calculate the formula. But most of us in the industry, most of us that work in this environment in cybersecurity, will not need that risk tolerance. Now, however, having said that, doesn't mean now you're going to accept all kinds of risks. You need to use a mission-based focus and make sure that the risk to the systems that support the mission and the corporate objectives of your organization, those that deliver the products and services to your customers and shareholders, are as secure as possible. The risk to those systems has to be dragged to a minimum as possible. The rest of it, not to say, hey, it is open season. No, but focus on those first, and then you can work towards the other systems in terms of risks. So having a good risk management methodology in place, a good risk assessment program in place, a good mitigation action in place that can address either completely fix, transfer the risk, avoid the risk, or even accept the risk to a degree that your senior executives feel comfortable with. Make sure you have that. So you not necessarily need a risk appetite, but if you have a strong risk management program that drives your cybersecurity tasks, that is key. So that is the big picture that will support achieving the organization's business goals.